What's up, Vetters? Patrick here with Vetted. I have a very special video for you. I have an interview with the one and only Robert Salas. Robert Salas is a retired U.S. Air Force captain and a graduate of the U.S. Air Force Academy from 1964. He served 7 years on active duty, working as a weapons controller, flying target drones, commanding intercontinental ballistic missiles as a launch officer, and contributing as a missile propulsion engineer on the Titan III program.
My name is Robert Salas.
Notably, while stationed at Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana in 1967, he witnessed an incident where a UFO reportedly disabled 10 nuclear missiles.
On an early morning of March 16th, 1967, I got a call from my security guard, primary security guard upstairs.
An event that has since shaped his advocacy for UFO disclosure.
I was downstairs 60 feet underground in a capsule, monitoring and controlling 10 nuclear-tipped Minuteman missiles.
After leaving the Air Force in 1971, he worked as an engineer for Martin Marietta and Rockwell International, then spent 21 years with the Federal Aviation Administration. Later, he became a mathematics teacher.
I got a call that morning that they were seeing strange lights flying in the sky.
Salas has authored books like Faded Giant and has spoken publicly about his experiences, including at a 2010 National Press Club press conference.
My weapons started going down, one after the other. They went into a no-go condition, what we call a no-go condition. They were unlaunchable.
Pushing for recognition of UFO incidents involving nuclear facilities.
We lost somewhere between 6 and 8 weapons that morning within minutes of having received that second phone call of a UFO hovering outside the front gate.
All right, Vetters, look who I have in the house, Mr. Robert Salas. Am I saying that right? Salas?
You got it. Perfect.
Awesome. I hear Salas, I think Hispanic. My mom's from Mexico City. My brother was born in Guadalajara. I was almost born there, but I ended up being born in Omaha. Do you have a Hispanic background yourself?
Absolutely. Both my parents were born in Mexico. I was born in Chandler, Arizona.
Nice. Arizona. Vámonos. Yeah. Do you speak Spanish at all?
Cómo no, sí, un poco.
Sí. Muy bien, muy bien. Yeah, my wife's from Spain. I'm moving to Spain in in 6 weeks. Yeah, I lived there for a few years before, but we're moving back. So
what part of Spain?
I'm moving to a town called Cáceres, which is in a region called Extremadura. It's the largest state, if you will, in Spain. It's bordering the Portuguese border, maybe like 2-3 hours north of Madrid. So it's a great place to get jamón serrano, the cured ham. The best ham in the world comes from there. So, but anyway, my Spanish is household. That's why I ask. I speak Spanish all the time, except when I do Vetted, to be honest with you, and speak with my family and stuff. So, really excited to talk to you, Robert. I figured we would, you're such a key figure in this topic in the UFO community, and it's just an honor to have you on. And I thought, what better way to honor, your contributions, I should say, than just to kind of start a little bit with your background. You said your parents were born in Mexico. You were born in Arizona. So were you raised in Arizona too, or did y'all move somewhere else?
We moved to Los Angeles when I was about a year old. So I grew up in Los Angeles, literally. What's now called Commerce. Not too far from. It is a little suburb of LA. And I went to high school there, and then I went to got accepted to the Air Force Academy in Colorado Springs, and so I spent 4 years there and graduated in 1964. Was active duty Air Force Uh, did flew some target drones uh, and helped train pilots on intercepts in Florida. That was a great assignment. That was down in Tyndall Air Force Base.
Oh
Um,
wow.
that's near Panama City, Florida. And then I got asked to uh, volunteer for missile duty as a missile launch officer. And that's where I got that training for about a year, and then was assigned to Malmstrom Air Force Base in about 1966. I was there from 66 to 69. Then I finished my master's degree at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Ohio, where I met my current wife.
Wow.
And we've been together for over 55 years now.
Wow.
Yeah. And then LA Air Force Station back in LA. And then I resigned from the Air Force in 1971. After I resigned, the only thing I could think of what I wanted to do was to go ski. So,
I love it.
we went to Colorado, went to Denver, and uh, got it. I finally realized I had to get a job, so I went to work for Martin Marietta in the Denver area, and then back to LA at went to work for Rockwell International as a reliability engineer, doing some proposals for a space shuttle that they were looking for contracts. Uh, and then in 1974, I went to work for Federal Aviation Administration, and I worked there for about, oh, let's see, about 22 years, something like that, as in aircraft structures certification. Um, and then I resigned. I mean, I retired from the FAA, retired from government service, and decided to become a teacher. And so I was a math teacher for about 17 years at both public and private schools here in the in California.
And did you? And so you retired from? How long has it been since you retired from teaching?
Yeah, about I retired in 2016, I believe. Yeah, 2016. So,
Okay. I mean, that's not that long ago, roughly, right? Like,
uh, sort
do
of.
you still have some of those teaching urgencies when you wake up in the morning? You know what I mean? Like, oh
Yeah,
my God, forgot to grade this. Oh, wait a second, I
exactly.
don't do that anymore.
Exactly. No, I've had those moments. I really have. When I
That's
woke up
funny.
trying to figure out, you know, where I should be.
Yeah. That never goes away. No, I love it. That's great. I bet you were a great teacher. That's awesome. You know, you said you joined the Air Force. Like, was that something you always wanted to do?
Yeah.
You know, what kind of made you want to get specifically into the Air Force?
Well, I don't know. It seemed uh, interesting. And I had two uncles that fought in World War II, one in the Pacific and one in Europe. Uh,
Yeah.
and so I looked up to them and I wanted to do my bit for service, military service. And so chose the Air Force. Um, At any rate, I enjoyed it. I enjoyed being in the
Yeah.
Air Force, except,
Sure. Except what? Was there something you didn't like
well,
about
I
it?
got uh, I got to where I was opposing the Vietnam War, and you can't do that as a military officer. So I decided to resign.
Yeah, okay. No, I understand. Yeah, my father was in the Air Force too, in the 70s. He was born in 49. That's why I was born in Omaha, Nebraska, because he was stationed there at the time. Yeah, he enjoyed serving his country, but I don't know if he really enjoyed his experience in the Air Force, to be honest with you. Kind of essentially. But he always supported the troops. He was always, you know, but yeah,
Right.
I think his experience was
Uh,
they sent him to some weird like island off the coast of Alaska somewhere where, he just hated it, to be honest with you. I think that was more it, just where he got stationed. He's in Omaha, it's just like can't get out of the cold, can't get out of the snow. Yeah. But it's an interesting I think the same sort of mentality you had. My grandfather served in World War II, and I think my father did the same thing. He wanted to, serve, but my father also opposed the Vietnam War as well. So I'm sure he faced some of the same adversities you did, which is
yeah.
interesting. Do you ever go back to Mexico at all, Robert? Or how does that work?
Well, not on a regular basis. No, I've been to Mexico a couple of times. Once to speak in near Mexico City in Puebla, but
Yeah.
I also went back fairly recently. I think a year or two ago, and I spoke at the basically their House of Representatives. Uh, uh, I was invited, to speak to that body about my UFO experience because they're also dealing with this subject UAP and thinking about whether or not they need any regulations to cover any issues that they might be having, such as we are.
Sure.
You know,
Yeah. That makes sense. That's kind of interesting that you've got to experience both in a sense, right? So, what difference, do you see, good and bad, like from how you felt, you know, Mexico is approaching it, and versus how we're approaching this?
I think I also spoke in Brazil to the Brazilian Senate,
Oh wow,
another government body in Brazil.
yeah,
Uh, and I think both those countries, Mexico and Brazil, are looking at it differently in the sense that they have no issues inviting people who've had very varied experiences with the phenomena and having them present their stories. Uh, and so in the U.S. here, of course, we've got highly classified programs which there's been reluctance to reveal to the public. We know they're there. We've heard it from many sources. Many people have made claims about recovering air objects. I'm sorry, uh, and certainly bodies of extraterrestrial visitors. So, and all that remains classified, highly classified.
sure.
Uh, but they seem to be more open in other countries.
More open to hearing. Yeah, I mean, that's interesting. So you've spoken to what we might deem the House of Representatives in Mexico, the Senate in Brazil. What about the American government? Who have you testified sort of but like behind closed doors, or
I did
how it's,
testify to the Arrow Group. You've heard of Arrow, right?
of course. Yeah.
Yeah. So they, wrote to me and asked me to present my story to them for their historical record, and I did. At first, they said they were going to try to get me to come to Washington to speak to them in a skiff, but then that fell through. It turned out ultimately just a phone call from them to where I'm sitting right now. So, there
It
was
seems so
nothing.
strange.
There was nothing classified about my presentation, um,
Sure.
at least not from my standpoint.
Yeah. Did you feel disappointed by the like? that? Did you wish like they took you in and talked to you in person rather than seems very
Well,
informal?
I would rather have talked to them in person, but I was able to present a full PowerPoint presentation, which included over 22 documents
Oh wow.
supporting my case, and I recorded the entire conversation. By the way, it was over 2 hours.
Oh really? You think
Um,
that'll ever see the light of day? Probably not, right?
well, no, I told them I was going to do it. They didn't ban me from recording it, so I've got the full recording. Uh, but I'm glad I did. At the end, I asked them a question, and they said, "What's your question?" And I said, "Are you going to check with the Air Force to verify my account of things here?" And you might be surprised by their answer, but they said no. Uh, and the reason they gave is that they have tried to contact the Air Force on previous testimonies that they got from other Air Force personnel, and they got no cooperation, basically. That's what they said.
Wow.
So it's almost like they gave up on trying to get the Air Force to confirm any of the things that they'd heard from other, ex-military, ex-Air Force people.
Sure. That
Very
seems so
disappointing.
strange.
Very
Yeah, it's
disappointing.
very disappointing, right? Doesn't that seem so strange? Like, can't they force the air? I mean, what's the whole point of the air? Like, that a agency could deny them that, like, not cooperate. I just didn't even think,
Well,
how is that allowed?
if you look at the regulation that Arrow is operating under, uh, one of their remits is to develop a coordinated effort with all agencies in the government to
Yeah.
reveal what they've got and also to cooperate. And so this seems like a pretty big hole in the way things are operating in Washington right now. I know the Congress people and senators that are looking for answers are also having trouble getting them from
Sure.
various agencies. So
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to solve that problem. That sounds like they're having a lot of trouble with that.
Well, it kind of like puts an asterisk or multiple asterisks on their historical reports because it's not really that thorough if they didn't, right? If they took your testimony over the phone, they don't even contact Air Force to corroborate any of it because they've already tried before and they got pushed back. So they just said, well, like you said, they just like forget about it. That puts a lot of asterisks on their historical report. And yeah,
Right.
that's kind of,
Exactly.
that's, it's not good.
Yeah.
because they're not getting the full story.
Hopefully there will be more hearings. I understand there might be a hearing at the end of this month, although I haven't heard more from that. Uh, the good
About
news,
UAP, you mean? A UAP
yeah,
hearing?
UAP hearing, sure, yeah.
Oh,
Uh,
wow.
but the good news is they did announce that they hired uh, David Grush uh,
Yep.
to help them with. I don't know how he's going to help, but I think Congressman Burleson put
Correct.
him on his staff temporarily to try to coordinate some efforts on the next hearing. I have,
Let's say
go ahead.
no, no, no. Please finish your
I
thought.
just going to say I have not been invited uh, as of today, but still hopeful that someday I might be invited to give public testimony because I think it's an important part of the phenomenon of these incidents that I've identified. At least about 13 separate incidents involving UFOs over nuclear facilities, either nuclear energy or nuclear weapons facilities.
Wow. No, I absolutely. I think I've seen lots of lists of, in the UFO community. Who would you want to testify? You're at the top a lot. Okay, I'm just telling you, like a lot of people would love to see you testify, including myself, especially because you're so keen to do it as well.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. So I definitely hope that that happens. So, you haven't been asked. Hopefully, well, maybe there's a hearing at the end of this month, but that clock is ticking because there's literally days left.
That's
So
true.
I don't know if that's going to happen. I know they're having the oversight committee the Federal Secrets Task Force is having their first hearing. I believe April 3rd. That date could be wrong, but the beginning of April here about JFK. So I'm curious, like when they're going to get to UAP at that point. Like the question I was going to ask you before is if you were, you mentioned David Grush coming on board, Eric Burleson's staff, and I
Mhm.
covered that, and I was super excited about that. If you were Eric Burleson, how would you utilize Grush right now? Like what would you
Well,
what could he do?
I'd get names and places of where he thinks the evidence is. You know, if we have a recovered craft, where is it? Where is it located? If people have analyzed bio, what do they call it, biologics,
Yeah,
uh, who has done that, and where are the samples held? Uh, uh, and I'm sure David Grush could probably give him some information. Now the question is, would he be breaking some kind of a secret security oath in
sure.
revealing that information? And um, I think there's a lot of gullibility in the Congress, thinking they can just ask an agency to declassify um, certain location or a certain project, certain program, um, and uh, they're going to have a lot of. All I'm saying is they're going to have a lot of difficulty doing that uh,
Yeah.
because of the way the security system is set up.
So you think them trying to declassify, let's say, for instance, the UFO documents, whatever, like across all the different agencies, is a tougher road than they
I
are prepared for?
absolutely
Yeah.
because there has been. I'm convinced. We can go into it in some detail later, but that there is a small organized group or cabal within government, and not just our government, other governments, that are dedicated to holding these secrets. They're not going to release this information um, easily. Um,
Sure.
it's going to take some kind of presidential intervention, I think, in order that to happen.
Do you think that these factions within the governments, all the different governments across the world, however many governments involved, do you think that they work together?
Yes, I do. I think there's a coordinated effort, and there's evidence to that. It's anecdotal a little bit, I know, but other evidence I think is in writing where a, a group of individuals visits another country and acquires information about UFO incidents in that country, and they have coordinated or corresponded back and forth on various incidents. So
Sure.
I think the U.S. is probably the central hub of this cabal, but they're getting inputs from all over the world. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's scary to think about that, to be honest with you. How do we like, I don't know what the right word is, not a defeat, attack, like how do we defend? Like, what? How do we approach this situation? Like,
Well,
how?
all right. I've already said I'm more than willing to testify. Bring me before a public hearing, and I will swear under oath uh, that, of my story that I will tell the public on national television. I'm sure there'd be a lot of interest in not only what I have to say, but other witnesses like me, and there are many others who would testify to UFO incidents over nuclear weapons bases. Uh, give them the protections that they need to go
Sure.
public
Yeah.
if they're revealing something that they've been sworn to secrecy about. And I think that will go a long way to get the public outcry for these agencies to come forward, like the Air Force.
Sure.
Um, if you don't do something like that, they're going to hit a wall trying to get agencies to come forward.
Sure.
But
Yeah.
you have to get public witness testimony out there, and the more the better, uh, and that's doable. I
Sure.
mean,
Yeah.
the these committees now, uh, oversight committees, they could give them the power of subpoena and subpoena witnesses to come to Washington and give public testimony. Um, so that's why I say it's doable for the
Yeah.
Congress to do that if they will, focus on doing that. The hearings we've had up to now are just were just yeah. I think we have recovered craft, or I think we've recovered bodies. I know people, but I can't talk about it. That sort of thing. Hey, let's get the people that are actually working on these projects, these highly classified projects, um, and get them in front of a camera in public. I think that
Yeah.
would go a long way.
Yeah. I think you're right, and I completely agree, and I think a lot of people, um, you know, agree with that sentiment. To be honest with you, I mean, I could see a hearing of witnesses like yourself who have had these, like you said, whether it be at a nuclear base or nuclear energy, however you put it before, right? Just that's all the hearing it. That's all the witnesses are that it's nuclear related and what they're. I mean, that's powerful.
Yes,
That
it
that would
is.
be a powerful hearing, for sure, because of the implications
Yeah,
of the nuclear aspect, right? Like that would be powerful.
and then the Congress could bring, people from the Air Force, Secretary of the Air Force, to a hearing and say, well, what about this testimony
Yeah,
here? Can you
yeah,
confirm or deny that this occurred? And then go from there.
yeah,
Follow
yeah. I
wherever
agree.
that leads.
Sure. No, I completely agree. I can't imagine why that hasn't, happened. Why do you think so many firsthand witnesses are getting overlooked when for these hearings that have happened? Of course, the first one had Ryan Graves and David Fravor, who had, witnessed things
Yes.
more David Fravor than anything with the Nimitz incident, and
Yeah.
you know, some even argue Grush has some sort of firsthand
Well,
experience.
he claimed I don't know about firsthand, but he claimed he knew about programs, but he could only talk about them in a skiff. But that never
Yeah,
happened.
never
Why did
happened.
it never happen? And
Yeah, we're
well,
coming up on 2 years this summer.
yeah, and it's because Congress was told it's not going to happen. We're not going to allow Grush to reveal this highly classified stuff.
Yeah,
Uh, and that came from DOD or the IC, the intelligence community. I don't know who. Um,
sure. Yeah, they blocked it, right? And that's
yeah.
part of the reason I heard from I think Burchett in an interview, he said that part of the reason they're bringing Grush on with Burleson is potentially, or maybe it was Luna that said it, it can maybe get around the classification issue potentially if he's a staff. I don't know what the details were, but I don't know. It looks like they're trying to find other ways than just getting him in a skiff and sitting down. But I also saw an interview where they wanted to get Lou Elizondo, David Grush, and Arrow in a skiff and get them, talking. That sounds like that would never happen, to be honest. But you
Yeah.
know, it's like I mean, I would imagine. So at the end of the day, you feel a little disappointed with how
Well,
this is going.
you asked me earlier why you thought I was have not been invited yet. I've got a theory on that, and it goes like this: the every year or two, the Department of Defense comes out with something called a nuclear posture review,
Okay.
where they give their position on nuclear weapons and their use, etc., and their programs. And they start that off, the written form starts off by saying that nuclear deterrence is the very basis of U.S. national security. So they've they've made that statement, right? It's a kind of a hard and fast statement. Uh, so this has been the policy of DoD since probably Eisenhower administration, when they first dreamed up this MAD concept, mutually assured destruction.
Yeah.
Whereas we must have a preponderance of nuclear weapons, at, at least as many as any adversary would have, in order to deter them from attacking the U.S. with nuclear weapons. Well, okay, maybe that's fine for a while, but what it does do, what it has done, is uh, uh, allow other countries to use the same philosophy to develop their own nuclear programs, uh,
No. Yeah.
such as Israel has done, such as India,
Yeah.
Pakistan, uh, the UK, France, China, all nuclear powers. Um, and of course, there could be more on the horizon that want to develop nuclear weapons. So, what this concept of deterrence has done is create more countries with more weapons out there, uh, creating a higher risk that they will be used at some point.
So do you think they don't want you to testify because that would show some sort of weakness in our?
Well, yeah, if I testify, I will testify to the fact that these objects of unknown origin can disable our nuclear missiles.
Yeah. They're scared
Uh,
of that. They're scared of
and
that
the
going
DoD
out.
does not want to hear that. No, they don't.
Sure.
They don't want anybody publicizing something like that because they don't have the answer to how to stop that.
Sure.
Uh,
And it's not just your incident, right? There's many incidents, so that
exactly.
it starts to multiply. All right, that's interesting. That's an interesting, honestly, that's a pretty logical theory
Yeah.
of why they don't want you to come in and talk about this. You know, in a hearing, right? Because it's going to go all over the news if that happens. That's interesting. Well, I hope they can. I hope Mace, you know,
But on the
Luna can get around that
yeah,
somehow.
yeah. See, I still believe that, or I'm convinced that these incidents where missiles or nuclear weapons were disabled and uh, were done uh, by extraterrestrial or non-human intelligences. I'm convinced of that. But they were done as a warning to us to get rid of our nuclear weapons. Uh, because obviously they are not weapons of any kind of practical war. Uh, by practical, you know what I mean. You know,
Yeah.
any nuclear war would be completely insane, right?
Yeah.
Uh, so
There'd be nothing left to fight for.
no,
It's like, you know what I mean? It's like the end all. It's the checkmate.
so,
It's the end. It's the end of the road.
so they're
It's
not
like
really weapons of war. Let's put it that way.
it's a
Uh,
good point, actually. Yeah.
so why even have them? Why take the risk
Sure.
of destroying every living thing on Earth by having these weapons? Let's just get rid of them.
Sure.
And in fact, under the Obama administration, a treaty was signed with Russia. I think it was called the New START Treaty, where one of the objectives was not only to reduce the level of operational nuclear weapons, but to work towards zero nuclear weapons between the two countries. Um, and of course, that went away after Obama left office. And of course, now we've got Russia threatening Ukraine with the use of tactical nuclear weapons, so called tactical. Now, these tactical nuclear weapons uh, are relatively small uh, weapons on the order of 15 to 20 kilotons, but that's the same size weapon that was used in Hiroshima and Nagasaki at the end of World War II.
Oh, wow. Oh, I didn't
So
know that.
that's still a big bang. It still
Sure.
do a lot of damage, and kill a lot of people at one time,
Yeah.
and a lot more after the radiation gets in the atmosphere.
Sure.
So, the use of any small or large nuclear weapon uh, would be devastating uh, because
Yeah.
it would provide um, an example of using these weapons in these so-called minor wars that we've been fighting,
Sure.
and allow others to do the same. So we have to get rid of all of them. But not only Russia, but the U.S. is also developing or has developed tactical nuclear weapons
Yeah.
that could be used in a something less than a world war.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean, well, let's kind of jump into your incident, if that's okay, a little bit. This was what you would, essentially testify about. I know you've had multiple experiences, but this main one is kind of the one you're really known for, and you've spoken about, and the one you would testify to, right? Which is the 1967 Malmstrom Air Force Base incident. Am I
That's
correct
that's
in saying that?
that's fine. Well, there were two in 1967,
Oh, okay.
and uh, I'll start with mine. On
Sure.
March 24th, 1967, I was in command of a flight of 10 missiles. Uh, our facility was located about 100 miles east of Great Falls, Montana, or east of Malmstrom Air Force Base, located near Great Falls, um, at near the town of Roy, Montana. So when we went out on alert status, we'd go out as two-man crew to one of these launch control facilities. And that's where we had the command and control of these missiles. The missiles were located actually in a about a mile or two away from this launch control center, and the actual launch control center was 60 feet underground, uh, and and we were in a concrete and steel capsule located 60 feet underground. We had all the controls there. There were no controls or uh, ability to impact the missiles themselves above ground. Uh, so on this evening, March 24th, I was in command of the facility because my commander was taking a rest break. We had a little cot down there. One of us had to be on alert the full 24 hours we were on uh, in control of that facility. So he was taking a break, a nap. I was in command. I get first a call from my topside guard. We had about 6 guards, security people upstairs, up at the top. Anyway, he calls and says, "Sir, we've been seeing some strange lights in the sky flying directly overhead here." I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, "Well, they're not aircraft." He said they're flying very fast. They're just white lights. Uh, there's no engine noise. They're making very odd maneuvers. In other words, almost 90-degree turns, stopping in midair and then reversing course. Aircraft just don't do these things that we've been seeing. And I said, "You mean like UFOs?" uh, the reason I said that is because we had reports in the local newspaper about people seeing lights in the sky and reporting them. And so they were written up in various stories. Uh, Even that week, uh, that very week, in the
And
paper,
you mean locally, like the local papers where you were?
the Great Falls Tribune, yeah,
Wow.
in Great Falls.
Yeah.
Uh, so I was just joking with him pulling his leg about the UFOs, but he said very seriously, he said, "Sir, these are not aircraft."
Wow.
So he repeated that. I said, "Well, okay, let me know if anything more interesting happens." And we kind of hung up. I didn't pay too much attention to this report, although he was serious. It wasn't a joke.
And he was all by himself when he saw this?
No, no, he had the other guards up there also saw him. So he was reporting what they had all seen.
So he's calling in with everyone's kind of
Yeah,
account, right? Like we all see in these things. Okay, I see. I see.
yeah. So 5 minutes go by after that call, and he calls back, and this time he's screaming into the phone. I can't make out what he's trying to say because he sounds very frightened. He's screaming into the phone, and finally I
Wow.
get him calmed down a little bit. I say, "What's going on up there?" And he said, "Sir, there's a bright red orange uh, object hovering right above the front gate of our facility. And I've got all the men out here with their weapons. What do I do?"
Holy
Well,
cow.
yeah. So I was a dramatic call to get. Of course, I had no idea what to tell him, but we had never experienced anything like this. But he was dead serious, and like I said, he was very frightened. I could tell by his voice. And um, I said something like, "Make sure the facility is secure." So that gave him the authority. Of course, they had the authority to use force to maintain security up topside. Uh,
If this object did something or what, they had
yeah,
the permission to do what they needed, essentially, right? To
Exactly.
take care of it. How big was this object to them?
Well, uh, but he said that it was a bright light, and there was something inside the light that he could barely make out. Was kind of an oval shape, but he had a hard time seeing it because of the brightness of the light.
Sure.
And
Like
later,
trying to see the shape of a car when you're staring at the headlights on a dark night, right? Like you can't really see the shape of it, right?
yeah,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
wow.
So later on, he estimated it 40 to 50 feet
Oh,
long.
wow. Yeah.
But anyway, it was pretty big to them because it was sitting right in front of them.
Yeah. That's for sure. It's
Yeah.
glowing red. It's in a place where nothing is supposed to be, right? I mean,
Oh
this
no.
airspace is restricted, right? I mean, things aren't just supposed to fly around there.
Yeah, that's right. Exactly.
Yeah.
So he said, "I have to go now, sir. One of my guards got injured." He hung up the phone. Uh, so what I did first, for some reason, I don't know why, I looked over at the status board we had. It's a large panel that had rows of lights for each missile, uh, and they were all green, meaning they were operational. They were ready to launch. It wouldn't have taken us long to launch them if we had to. Uh, and like I said, they had no way of doing anything to the missiles upstairs. They couldn't have pulled some kind of a prank or anything. We had all the controls in this underground capsule.
Yeah.
So I went over to my commander because now it felt to me like we were under some sort of an attack. That's the way it felt. Upstairs, there was something going on. We could not leave our location because that would require opening a huge door, which was a no-no, of course, because we would expose ourselves to, excuse me, a takeover of our location, and we didn't want that. So I couldn't go upstairs and take a look. Neither one of us could until we were relieved by another crew, and that wouldn't happen until the next morning. So I
Wow.
started to tell him about the phone calls, and then all of a sudden we get this log blast of a horn. We knew what that was. That's the sound where one of the missiles goes off alert status for whatever reason, which rarely happened. We rarely lost a missile for any reason. Um, in the 3 years I was there, uh, so we look over. Sure enough, one of the missiles was now had an indicator of red, and then very quickly all the rest of the missiles went off alert. So we had all 10 of our missiles go down while
Wow.
this object was still up there. So,
Holy
but
cow.
I also saw that we had two of the sites had incursion lights, meaning it's possible that someone was trying to get into two of the launch facilities. The launch facilities is where the missiles were actually located, um, about a mile away, but in a kind of a ring around where we were. Uh,
Got it.
so I had to send guards out there. So I called back upstairs. Of course, I asked him about the light, and he said it just flew off just as I called, and at high speed, it was gone. Um, the guard that got injured cut his hand, and I never got a complete story as how that happened, but it was not from the UFO. It was something he did with his rifle, or it could have been uh, trying to climb a fence, and we had barbed wire all around the facility, so he could have cut his hand that way.
Sure.
I never got a story, but I did get confirmation in writing from another guard who was in the barracks that evening, where the security guards stayed, and he confirmed that there was an injury to one of the guards from our facility. Uh, anyway, we had to have him flown back to base hospital to get stitches on his hand, and but it wasn't serious. Uh, so I did order security guards to go out to two of the launch facilities. And when they got out there, they reported back that they were seeing objects above those facilities, those two facilities. So,
So this is now different locations from the original incident where the other guard saw the lights and the red
right,
light,
right.
right? Like, so this is totally different locations. Oh, wow.
Well, these locations are where the missiles are.
Yeah,
Where
the
we are,
actual missiles.
yeah,
Correct.
where we are, we're just a control center.
Sure. Which makes
Uh,
sense. And then the missiles are sort of circled around.
exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, around that. Yeah, no, that makes sense. So it's happening at two of those locations.
Right.
There's an incident, and at the guard tower, or I'm not sure what to call the other facility, where
That's
the
a
red.
launch control facility. Is
Oh,
It's a fenced area uh, with something that looks like a farmhouse on top.
sure,
Uh, it's supposed to look nondescript, uh,
sure.
so people won't pay too much attention to it.
Yeah, just blends in.
Yeah,
Wow. All right, so these guys go out to this. They say they see something hovering over it.
exactly. Yeah, you see these objects again over two of the facilities, and they were told by the controller, security controller that I spoke to, just to come back to the base, and so they did, and they lost radio contact with him during that trip back. Uh, so for some reason they lost radio. Um, and my commander also called the command post back at Malmstrom Air Force Base and reported our incident uh, to the um, command post, the wing command post. Uh, and he turned to me after that call and said the same thing happened at another flight. And I had forgotten, when I went public, I had forgotten that initially, but later on I remembered him actually saying that to me. The same thing happened at another flight. And I thought it was that evening, but it turns out it was 8 days earlier on March 16th, which I was later able to track down. And so within the span of 8 days, we had 20 missiles go down during UFO encounters.
Oh, both times all 10 missiles went down.
Each time,
Oh, wow.
all 10 missiles were disabled by during a UFO sighting over the facilities. Yeah.
And so they had the same sort of red glowing object at both incidents.
Well, in the Echo flight incident, uh, the commander, the guy in charge was Walt Fiegel, now retired Colonel Walt Fiegel. Um, and he got notified by the people he had out there already. These are maintenance and security people out at two of the facilities, again, Echo flight facilities, had been doing maintenance out there. And when the first missile went down at Echo flight, he called out there and said, "You're not supposed to do anything until you notify me or coordinate." And they said, "We hadn't even started our work. And by the way, there's a UFO hovering right above us." And
Oh, they called it a UFO at that moment.
well, basically, I mean, I don't know what words they use exactly, but this object was hovering right above them when the missile went down. And the same thing at another location, another missile. Again, they had guards and maintenance people out there, and they had an object hovering just above them when it went down. And they lost all 10 within seconds of each other. Now,
How
all
long
this,
does it take for them to come back? Like the
well,
or green lights or whatever.
we had a way of querying the system, and we were getting the message of guidance and control system failure, which required, in order to bring them back up, it required teams to go out there, maintenance teams, to physically retarget the missiles, each one, and
Oh wow.
that's a kind of a process. They have to do
Sure.
some using of collimator lights and making sure that the missile is positioned in the proper way for its particular target, etc. It's a involved process. So it
Sure.
probably took a full day at least to get these missiles back up on alert.
Wow. Wow. So
Uh,
so what is your like overall so after this I guess the question is you believe that was NHI that did that. At what point did you
Absolutely.
like realize that or come to that conclusion? Like right after or
Well, of course, right after it happened, I had a lot of questions. I Because of what we knew about how the system operated, this should not have happened. Um,
sure.
uh, so we got relieved the next morning, and we were ordered back to the base at Malmstrom. We were helicoptered back and then ordered to go to our squadron commander's office. First thing I asked him when I walked in there, he's a full colonel. He was old World War II pilot, B-17 pilot, um, fought in the skies over Europe. A cool customer. I had spent some time with him at the officers club, having doing a little drinking with him. I knew him very well.
Yeah.
We were on good terms. The first thing I asked was, "What the hell was that?" I mean, are we was the Air Force doing some kind of an exercise to
Yeah.
check our readiness or something like that? He said, absolutely not. He was white as a sheet, and he couldn't explain what had happened or why. Uh, and then there was another guy with him from AFOSI, Air Force Office of Special Investigations, shoved a piece of paper at us, said, sign here. What's this? This is a non-disclosure statement. You're never to speak about this to anyone. No one in the Air Force, no one in your family, nobody. And so basically, we're ordered to sign this NDA, which we did, and that was it. Uh, we were told to leave the office, and
Just
we
get
were,
back to life.
yeah,
Right.
we were
Just
expecting
yeah.
some kind of a debrief.
Sure.
I was there for another 2 years, uh, and each time we went out on alert status, we would be briefed about any kind of activities going on with the missile systems. If they had any problems in the field, any activities that they were doing, etc. But we never were debriefed on any of the investigations that would be ongoing on these two incidents, the one on March 16th and my incident on March 24th,
Yeah.
67.
And both of those incidents happen at the same spot, right? We're talking about the same 10 missiles.
No, no, we're not talking about the same 10 missiles.
So it's two different
Two different,
locations.
what we call flights of missiles.
Okay.
One flight
Oh,
is one
wait.
flight of
A flight of missiles, like a flight of wine or a flight of
flight of
beer.
birds.
That's hilarious. Wow, that's funny.
No, that's a common terminology in the Air Force.
Sure.
A flight in this case was 10 missiles.
Yeah.
This was Minuteman 1. We now have Minuteman 3 missile systems.
Got it.
But anyway, Echo Flight is another facility like ours at Oscar, uh, but it's located at Lewistown, Montana. Ours was near Roy, Montana, not far apart. I mean, but still, there were two separate locations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Within 8 days of each other. No, that's crazy. So at what point do you then say that this is non-human? You
Well,
know.
uh, of course, I thought about this afterwards, but I couldn't speak to anybody about it.
Sure.
In fact, the guards did call me at home. I don't know how they got my home phone number, but they called me at home. Those same guards, they called me the next morning and wanted me to come and talk to them about the incident. I really, really wanted to go talk to them because I wanted to get more information from them.
Sure.
But I'd already signed that NDA, and I would have broken that and spent a lot of time in prison if I'd gone over and talked to them. So I told them I couldn't do it. Um, uh, and so it went for the next, I think it was 27 years. I didn't say a word to anybody about it, not my wife, nobody.
Oh
Um,
wow.
I couldn't. Uh, Otherwise, I'd risk, again, going to prison. And I
Sure.
actually had typed in Leavenworth Prison in that NDA. By the way, we
Oh
never
god.
got copies of that NDA. They wouldn't give them to us. Then in 1994, I was walking in a bookstore. I was out of the Air Force by then. Uh, and I happened to see a book on the shelf called Above Top Secret by Timothy Good.
Yeah.
And I was flipping through the pages, just happened to land on page 301 of that book. And there was a short paragraph about uh, missiles shutting down during a UFO encounter at Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1966 and 67. Uh,
Wow.
it wasn't a very long paragraph, but it described what I, at that point, recalled happened to me. And I
Sure.
said, what the hell did the Air Force declassify this? Because here it is in this book anybody can buy. And so I jumped to the conclusion, I guess, that the Air Force had declassified the incident.
Oh, so in your mind you're thinking, "Oh, they're talking about it now. It's
Yeah,
been so long. They're talking it's in a book and they're talking about it now."
yeah,
Okay,
that's the
that's interesting.
conclusion I jumped to
Sure. I don't blame you. I
because I
don't blame you.
wanted that to happen.
Sure. Yeah, because
I
you
wanted
felt if they talk about it first, now I can talk about it.
exactly. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I hear you.
So I went home and told my wife about the incident, and
Oh,
with
wow.
her friend was with her who knew about MUFON, Mutual UFO Network,
Mhm.
and suggested I contact them to get um, help with a FOIA request, Freedom of Information Act request. And I did, contacted them, and I got a hold of a man by the name of James Quatz, who was an investigator for MUFON at the time, and said, let's do a FOIA request and write a letter. However, let's not say anything about UFOs. Let's just talk about this incident that happened that Malmstrom Air Force Base in 1967 and see what they say. And so we did, and we got a response. And they said, you know what? This is a classified incident. However, since it's been so long, we're going to declassify it and we'll send you documents. And that's exactly what they did.
Wow.
Again, we didn't say anything about UFOs at the time.
Sure. Yeah.
And so we started getting documents about the Echo flight incident. That's the one that happened before mine, 8 days earlier. But I thought it was mine because of the way it was described, etc.
Sure.
And again, I jumped to the conclusion that that was my incident. I must have been at Echo Flight, but I knew that wasn't the same squadron. But at times we did act as substitute crews when some crews, for some reason, illness or whatever, couldn't make it. Uh, at any
You
rate, I
fill in.
started.
You fill in somewhere if you need to, right?
Yeah.
Essentially. Yeah, I get it.
So I went
Totally.
public as soon as I was notified by the Air Force that this incident was declassified. I went public and said this was a UFO incident. I was there, and here's the story. And I gave the story to the Great Falls Tribune, and they printed it, front page. Um, and then I went later on. I went on the Art Bell show and spoke about it on his show.
Yeah.
And I did other interviews, so I went public. However,
Is the Great Falls Tribune, is that the first time you go public? Period. Is in that newspaper article?
that was the first, yes,
That's the first story. And then the Art Bell is the first, like, using your voice to tell the story, essentially.
exactly,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, okay, I see.
exactly, yeah,
I see.
and that was
Is
what
that Great Falls Tribune, is that available somewhere to see that article? Did you keep that?
I've got a copy of it.
Is
I
there any
can,
way for me to get like a screenshot or something? I don't know. Some if it's not too much trouble, that would be really cool to include here. I think people would.
uh, I can send you a photo of it.
Yeah, only if it's not too much trouble. If it's too much trouble, don't worry about it. I don't want to
No,
put you
no,
out.
it's not too much trouble. I can send you a photograph of it. I wish I could just reach into my drawer here and grab it, but you don't know how many files I've got.
I
I,
get it. I
I'm just
totally. It's like, where is this thing? I get it.
I'm just inundated with stuff.
Oh, of course. Well, that was 30 years ago now, right?
Yeah,
Like, how many files have you collected since then? No, I get it.
yeah,
So you go, so you tell your story to the Great Falls Tribune, you tell it to Art Bell. Well, first you tell your wife and her friend, and
exactly,
so those are the very first people you ever actually revealed it to outside of yourself and the people who were part of the incident. It was your wife
exactly.
and her friend. How did they take this? I know they recommended MUFON, your wife's friend did, but like, how did your wife take it? Especially, I mean, I know if I told my wife something like that, I don't know how she would take it. To be honest with you.
Marilyn. Well, anyway, she was very supportive. She
Good, good,
absolutely believed me. It was not anything I had to really convince her of. We've got a very good relationship in that respect.
sure.
Well, in all respects, really. We've been married for 55 plus years now.
Yeah,
But
yeah. Doesn't last that long without that.
yeah, so no, she took it very well. She's been very supportive of me and everything we've done to promote, to tell this story publicly. She's always been supportive.
That's great. Okay, so you it goes out in the Great Falls Tribune. You go on Art Bell. Is the Art Bell interview the one that like really took off? Because that's a
It
huge
was
audience.
it was key. I'll tell you why. As a result of my appearance on the Art Bell show, I was contacted by some other people who had information about the incidents, and I was finally able to use those connections uh, to locate more information, more documents, uh, and also to contact my commander, who was in the capsule with me during the time of the incident, because I hadn't been able to up to that point. Didn't even remember his name. In fact, you
I
see,
get it.
when you have classified information, I found it uh, the best thing to do is to try to forget it if you're not using that information in the work you're doing. Um,
Sure.
the best thing to do is try to forget it as best you can, and so you won't um, accidentally reveal it.
Sure.
So a lot of these memories were faded. Uh, I knew the basic incident that had happened, but I had forgot names and things like that. But finally located my commander, Colonel Fred Mywald, now deceased. But before he died, we were able to make contact, have phone calls. We met in person. We talked it over. At first, he thought only a few of the missiles had gone down, but I had always remembered all of them, all 10 had been disabled. But he confirmed the basic story, and I've got that on a phone call I made with him in 1996 is when I first contacted him. And that's on my website. People can go listen to these audio calls with not only him, but
Oh, wow.
with the commander of Echo Flight, who,
The one that was previous to you, right? 8
yes,
days before yours. Got it.
yeah. And that's on my website.
Oh,
And
wow.
that's spiralgalaxy.org. So
Okay.
anybody can go there and listen to the audio of these contacts, these conversations.
I'll definitely put the link in the description and
Yeah,
give more about that for sure.
yeah.
Wow. That's okay. So, all right. So, at what
So,
point? Yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just going to say, when I spoke with Colonel Mywald, he told me we were not at Echo Flight, we were at Oscar Flight. So that was a shock to me because I had always thought we were the ones at Echo Flight.
Sure.
But he said, absolutely not. We were at Oscar Flight. And I said, okay, to myself now, I had a decision to make. What do I do now? Because we had signed an NDA and I had not received anything from the Air Force about the Oscar flight incident that we were involved. They hadn't declassified that officially. At any rate,
Oh, I see.
yeah. So at any rate, I thought it over and said, you know what? I've been speaking about this for a couple of years. I've given all these interviews. I'm not going to stop now. I'm just going to have to correct my location during my incident and the date. And so I did. And I decided to keep talking because if the Air Force had declassified Echo with the same result, UFO coming over and shutting down missiles, I don't see why they would object. Of course, this is my rationale
Makes sense.
to my continuing to talk about Oscar being a separate incident, happened on a separate date, separate location. And so I have. For the past 30 years or so, I've been openly speaking throughout the U.S. At conferences and also around the world. I've
Yeah.
spoken at about 16 countries, different countries in the world. uh,
Wow.
and may go to another one soon. I can't tell you about that one yet because it's not firmed up, but I think that's going to happen. Uh, and of
Wow.
course, I've given my testimony to Arrow.
Sure. Is this country you might be going to? Is this one you've already been to before, or this is a brand new country for you?
No, this is a different one, whole
Brand
new,
new. Yeah.
different area. Yeah,
That's great. It's getting out there. Well, that's
it
great.
is.
So
It is.
so you have no so the NDA you signed, like, is it still valid? Are you breaking it? Are you what is the I mean,
Well,
how does that work?
I suppose technically I'm in violation of that NDA because I have not, and the Air Force has not, or I haven't seen anything from the Air Force saying that the my incident has been declassified.
So, yeah. Wow.
But
That's
up to this point, I have not been hassled by anybody in government to stop talking about my incident.
sure.
And again, uh, I don't think they want any publicity around it.
Yeah, that's a fair point. If you brought it up, if they came out, that would put more light on it, right? That would shine more light on it.
Exactly. Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. So people can get the documents about the oh gosh, March
Echo.
8th, the Echo one. Is that I forget the date, but the Echo flight incident
Yeah. March 16th.
document March 16th. That's right. Yours was the 24th.
Yeah.
That's
I've
right.
got a lot of those documents in my book called Faded Giant,
Okay.
FADED Giant. Uh, I've got a lot of those yeah, FOIA documents in an appendix in the back in that book. But they can also see some of my documentation on my website. I also have a YouTube channel. It's Bob Salas at Giant Head 3. If they want to go to my YouTube channel, they'll see a series of short videos I made about my incident, and it walks you through the entire sequence of events.
Sure.
And also the documents. Some of the documents are shown there.
Some of that. Yeah. Oh, that's so just to kind of get back to this question, you may have answered, maybe I missed it, but like, what made you think that this incident was non-human intelligence? Like, at what point are you come to that conclusion?
Yeah, well, I started researching, when I went public, of course, I started researching everything I can get my hands on. And one of the FOIA documents goes into some um, theory of what happened. And one of the things that was done by Boeing was the prime contractor of the missile system, but they did their own investigation of the shutdowns of Echo, and the shutdowns of Echo were guidance and control system, the same as what happened with us.
Yeah.
We got the same readout, uh, but they because it involved the guidance and control system, and we had what's called a gosh, what's the name of that thing? Inertial guidance system. In other words, we weren't connected to any satellite up there to determine how to navigate the missile after launch, right? It had to calculate its course and where it was headed, where it would finally drop the weapon. Uh, so it had all that equipment internally. We had gyroscopes, of course, accelerometers, velocity meters, the whole schmear of it. would be that information would be sent to something called the logic coupler. So Boeing took uh, um, that part, the logic coupler, and did a bench test and tried to send it signals that would trigger it to shut down, basically. And so finally, they were able to come up with a particular signal, uh, time duration, uh, frequency, things like that. Uh, but they determined that this signal would have to be uh, a signal that came from outside the missile itself. In other words, nothing in the missile components could have created that signal. So the way we had control of our missiles is we had each of them connected to our launch control center about a mile away with this very large cable. Uh, so what this object, I'm getting to answer your question here.
Yeah, yeah.
This
I'm
object
listening.
must have done was to send a signal through 60 feet of earth and concrete. It was hovering above us, 60 feet of earth and concrete, and then penetrate this 9-inch diameter cable that was triply shielded against electromagnetic interference. In other words, to repulse any kind of electrical signal.
Sure.
But it would have had to send that and penetrate the cable, shoot that signal to the missile, to the logic coupler, and shut down the missile through by interfering with the logic coupler. Um, anyway, this was the theory that Boeing came up with. It was published in one of the documents that I have, and I may have that on the website, but I certainly showed it to Arrow, where this is stated. And they also stated that uh, they can't imagine how uh, this happened, and they called because they would have to do this to each missile separately through that cable within seconds,
Oh, I
and
see what you mean.
they
Yeah.
don't see how that could possibly have happened uh, uh, accidentally, right?
Sure.
It had to be planned. So that's why I'm saying we had nothing that we knew of that my commander or anybody in my command in the missile field. We had nothing. No, this was not an Air Force exercise of any kind. It was not us. If it had been the Russians, they would have been way in advance of us and knew exactly how our systems operated. But that's how I've concluded that this had to be, this object had to be from off Earth. It couldn't have been anything that the Russians or the Chinese or anybody else had the capability to do.
I see. So you make the conclusion that essentially because of this, you know, outside force making its way into all the missiles at the same time,
Yeah,
right, basically you saw capabilities that you thought
uh,
nobody has any of these capabilities on
no,
Earth.
no. And if we did, by now, some 58 years later, it's been 58 years since my incident, uh, our government would have, said we either had this capability or we are able to protect against any such incident in the future. And
I see.
of course, they haven't done that. Uh, so right
To you, that
now,
was the only logical conclusion at that point, was this is
this had
other
to be, yeah.
off-world, or,
And
well, it could be
in
something else.
addition to that, the way these objects moved was inexplicable. We
Sure.
had no aircraft that could do what pull the G's that this thing did, that
Yeah.
were observed as doing. And you get the same kind of commentary today on those objects seen, um, those Tic Tac objects seen by the Navy pilots, uh, and they saw the same kind of performance of these
Yeah.
objects.
Yeah. Do you think do you think more incidents like what happened to you, continued to happen after that,
Yes,
going into the 70s and 80s and 90s? Do you
yes,
do you think
yeah,
it still happens today?
yes, I think so. Well, let's say recently, anyway. But I want to mention another incident that happened in 1966. And
Sure.
again, this is public information. Uh, um, a man by the name of David Schindele, I probably pronounced that wrong,
Yeah.
but he's also testified to Arrow and testified that he relieved a crew who had lost 10 missiles during a UFO encounter the evening before he got there to relieve that crew. Uh, and he has written about that in a book he's written and testified to Arrow. He's testified in other UFO conferences. Uh, and so that happened in September of 1966, approximately. Within the span of 6 months between September of 66 and March of 67, um, we lost 30 intercontinental ballistic missiles during UFO encounters.
Wow.
So to me, again, these were just messages. Uh, I don't believe that these were some kind of an attack meant to meant to attack us in any way. These missiles were not damaged, by the way. None of these missiles were damaged. They had no electronics fried or anything like that. It was simply disabled so that they couldn't be launched. And I think that was a message of, uh, hey, humans, try to get rid of these things that are so damaging or could be.
But why do you think that's like, because they disabled them, you think they don't want us to have them? Wouldn't they have destroyed them somehow, or made them, because
I
all
don't think
you
so.
guys got them, back up online again, right?
That's right. If they wanted to destroy them, I think they could have. They could have done a lot of damage, but they didn't. Uh, so what we're talking about is speculation. Why not?
Of course, 100%.
Uh,
Yeah.
if they had, it would have been a war of the worlds, right?
Yeah. I mean, my
Uh,
God,
we would have
absolutely.
been at war with some
They
other.
would be disabling our most powerful weapon, and that is a sign of force, right? If they can just, like,
Right.
that's your most powerful weapon gone, and then we're left with, slingshots with rocks. I mean, I don't even know what we would do at that point. Um, no, that's a terrifying notion, to be honest. I've always had this theory, Robert, and I've always wanted to ask you this, actually, because I've had this theory of, like, the nuclear capabilities, and I've heard this before. These entities or these otherworldly beings that, we're the kids with matches, right? Theory, right? We've got these powerful weapons, and what, we could destroy our own planet or whatever the case may be. I think, or even the fact that some of these nuclear capabilities affect them somehow. I've heard some theories around that it kind of, when one goes off, it can break into their dimension, or somehow affects them in some way. And I thought, well, wouldn't they look at nuclear capabilities as nothing? if they're so powerful and so advanced, wouldn't that just be like a pebble in a pond to them? These nuclear weapons, like it's nothing to them. I don't know.
Well,
Just
it's
always
been
thought that.
proven, it's been shown that nuclear explosions during the test phase in Nevada, mostly, I guess, uh, White Sands or Nevada, uh, the nuclear explosion does produce an electromagnetic pulse.
That's what it was. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
what you're right.
electromagnetic pulse. Now, so how this electromagnetic pulse would affect them, I don't know. I don't know, but I have also heard from, let's say, experiencers, people that have been taken, and that they have been told that these nuclear weapons do affect them in ways uh, that haven't been specified.
Sure.
But I think more than that, let's take the very optimistic view. More than that, we have a very precious planet here that's filled, is teeming with life forms, and not only animal life, but of course, um vegetation and
Yeah.
plants and
Plant
things.
life. Yeah. 100%.
Uh, anyway, it's a rich planet. We have a rich planet, and I believe uh, one of the reasons they don't want us to destroy it is because we have such a varied amount of life forms here. It may be the jewel of the universe or the jewel of the solar system, and they want to see it protected. They want to see it, yeah. They want to help us protect this planet.
Sure. I mean, we're clearly, you know, the most thriving in our solar system. So, right, we're the oddball out, essentially. So, yeah, there could be something behind that, which is an interesting theory, to be honest with you. That is an interesting theory. So, Robert, so you have this incident in 1967. You know, how many more have you had? Like a lot more incidents or encounters that enforce this non-human intelligence
Yeah,
belief,
I
essentially.
have had an encounter, and I've talked about this since I think uh, 2011 or 2013, something like that, is when I first went public. I was hesitant to go public because I didn't uh, want to be deemed nutty.
Sure. Totally. I understand.
Anyway, uh, this happened in 1985. I was able to nail down that date, that year, because of the location where it happened. And I had been remodeling homes in the area of Manhattan Beach, California. And I remember the year that I had remodeled this particular home. Um, so sometime in the evening, sometime in 1985, can't pin the month or day down. I woke up from a dead sleep. I was, of course, with my wife, and I had two small children in the house. I woke up and noticed there was a bluish light coming from the living room. We had no blue lights in the living room. I woke up my wife and I said, "You see that blue light out there?" And she said, "Yeah." And so I said,
Oh.
"I'm going to have to look. I get up and investigate. There might be somebody in the house." Uh,
The
and she
wife's always sending the guys, right? That's what my wife does. Hey, hey, go check that out.
go do something about this.
Yeah, go do some. Yeah.
So, all right. So I turned around and tried to get up, and I couldn't move at that point. I was paralyzed. And I remember
Wow.
struggling. I remember physically what it was like to be paralyzed and struggling to get any mobility back in my arms, legs, feet, toes, anything. And I remember how difficult I couldn't move anything. And I tried and tried. At one point, I turned to my wife and I asked for help, and she was unconscious now. Now, remember, we had two small children in the house, and she wouldn't normally have been unconscious at that point, but she was. Uh, and then the next thing I recall was seeing something that looked like an individual or person in the doorway. I couldn't make out a face, it was too dark, but I remember seeing a hood on this individual. That's about it from that. And but that was frightening to see something or someone in the doorway of our bedroom. Um,
Wow.
the next thing that happened though was uh, it felt other small, very small beings in the room, and they seemed like children to me. I thought they were children. Uh, they weren't talking or making any sound, but they were there in the bedroom. And then I started getting lifted up off the bed, still paralyzed, but I was lifted off the bed and directed somehow towards the window of our bedroom, and these children were following underneath. Uh, and I had locked that window, by the way. I remember locking that window with a latch,
Yeah, I know what you mean.
double hung window. Um,
Yeah.
and I thought to myself, these children are so small, they can't even reach the latch, and they probably wouldn't know how to open it anyway. So I was thinking that when they took me right through the window. And again, I know this sounds ridiculous, but I went right through a closed window, no broken glass. I just went right through. Uh,
Holy cow.
Bright light outside in our backyard, and the next thing I know, I'm on a kind of a table, a metal table, felt like, uh, and I was being shown a long needle, and this a long needle,
Oh
over a
my
foot
god.
long, and they placed it in front of my eyes, or somebody did, and I could see a long, long, bony fingers, much longer than mine, and holding this needle and placing it in front of my eyes, and then telepathically telling me, "Here, we're going to insert this down there in my groin area," but it wouldn't
Oh.
hurt. They said it wouldn't hurt. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, right. So anyway,
Right. Yeah.
they started to do this, and it hurt like hell. I mean, it was the worst pain I've ever experienced. So that was another
Oof.
physical body feeling that I had recalled later on. Uh, it was extremely painful. And I verbalized that, not verbalize it, but telepathically told them, this does hurt. And almost instantly, the pain went away. The pain was gone. And so they finished whatever they were doing, um, sat me up on the table. I was escorted by a couple of these small gray figures, I guess, beings. Um, they floated me over to a molded seat inside the craft. Excuse me. And then they took me to another cubicle where one of them turned me around and poked two fingers down my spine. That was it. He turned me back around. I was escorted out, floating again, no walking, floating uh, along a curved corridor, white light at the end, bright light, and poof, I was back in my bed. Well, the next morning, neither my wife nor I remembered any of this. We didn't talk about it. We didn't remember it. Nothing.
Well,
And then, so again, about 20 some years later, I was speaking at a conference in Ireland, and my wife and I were sitting in the audience when an experiencer got up and talked about her experience. And she said, and then my bedroom was filled with blue light. I turned to my wife and said, because it clicked something in me, and I turned to her and said, "Do you remember a blue light in our bedroom one time?" And she said, "Yes, yes, a long time ago." And that again uh, convinced me at that point that that had been real. It was not a dream, not anything, but really happened.
sure.
And at that very evening, I had my first uh, hypnotic regression session, uh, and I've had four total, and that's how I've recovered the information I just shared with you.
Sure. The memories that you had
Yeah,
of that, right? That were suppressed up until that point,
right.
essentially. Yeah. Who was it that did the um what did you call it? Hypnotic regression? Is that what it's called?
The first one was with Mary Rodwell. I don't know if you've ever heard of Mary Rodwell.
I haven't heard that name.
She's Australian, but she's done a lot of sessions, uh, getting people to recall their memories um, with experiencers. And then I've had sessions with uh, American person and well, two more hypnotherapists, which I won't name right now.
Sure, I get it. You don't want them getting a bunch of crazy emails and
Yeah.
messages, right? Yeah, I get it. I totally get it. Yeah. So, are you? I would imagine you're happy with the results of these regressions, right? The memories you've gotten back, like in the sense that not necessarily happy that you went through it, but happy that okay, that really happened. That this feels real to me. That's a real memory.
Yes.
Is there some sort of relief to that a little bit?
Well, I don't know if the word relief, but it confirms what many others have talked about in being taken.
Yeah,
Um, and so I'm happy to confirm the fact that I'm convinced that I was taken. Yeah, the sessions and those three things: my wife confirming the blue light, the pain of the needle, and my struggle with paralysis during the whole time
sure,
in our bedroom.
sure.
Uh, all that convinces me that this was real experience. It was not something I dreamed up or made up in my mind.
Sure. No, I get it. Well, look, Robert, I won't keep you too much longer, but is, you know, so if we combine both of these incidents, right, the 1967, 1985,
Hmm.
for you, 100%, we are not alone. And not only are we not alone, but they come to planet Earth and interact with us in a myriad of
Yes.
ways,
Yeah, and they
essentially.
have some kind of an objectives
Sure.
in being here. they're not just coming to go to Disneyland
Yeah.
or
Be a
wherever.
lot cooler if they just if that was the only reason they came. We're here for Mickey, and that's it. Um, that's interesting. Yeah. All right. So what let's end on maybe a positive note here, or something optimistic. Like, what do you what do you think about the rest of this year? 2025, this fight for disclosure, right? I know with your testimony, and if there could be a hearing with someone like yourself and other people who've experienced what you've experienced, that would be powerful. But yeah, how optimistic or hopeful are you for kind of where we're headed?
Well, I think we've made a lot of progress in the last few years. By that I mean the Congress, people in Congress now have taken a sincere interest in trying to get to the bottom of what this all means, and what these things are, and
Sure.
how it impacts us. So that's very positive, and the cat's out of the bag. These are real. That's already been stated by various individuals in government, uh, that this is a real phenomenon, and so I don't. It's not going to go away at this point. I think there will be more hearings, hopefully many more, with real witnesses to the activities of various agencies in our government and various incidents worldwide. Um, I think that'll happen. So I am optimistic in that respect. The kicker is breaking through with this cabal that I call, uh, that's embedded in our government and other governments that are holding these secrets
Sure.
and working together, and very well organized. Probably were very well funded, because these secrets have immense value. If we can imagine it, how valuable this information could be if they've uncovered these technologies.
Yeah.
So let's keep interested in this. Uh, I hope the public maintains their interest also and keeps pressing for more and more information. Hopefully, we'll eventually get to disclosure.
Love it. Are you, have you seen the trailer for the Age of Disclosure documentary? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes. Actually, I'm in that.
You are in it.
I am. I haven't seen the movie yet, but I've been told by the producer director that I am. I will
You're
be in
featured
it.
in it. Wow. Okay. Wow. Because I got to be honest, I am so looking forward to seeing that.
Mhm.
I think it has the potential to be the quintessential UFO documentary that
Yes,
people turn to, that people share, that hey, I'm interested in here's check this out. There's an air of credibility around it that just regardless if it's agreed upon or not, there's maybe a stigma around. You have someone coming from outside the UFO community making this huge documentary, right? And presenting it in a nice package and a great concept, which is to get all of these right former government or current government officials on the record all in one documentary to say all of this. And wow, that's so cool that you're one of these people that's in this to talk about it. That's phenomenal. Yeah, I
absolutely.
literally cannot wait to see this. I could have gone to Austin to see it at South by, but I turned it down because I I don't know when the movie's going to be made public, and I don't want to hang on to that information for a year, 6 months, and not be able to talk about it because I mean I run a channel every day talking about it. It would kill me not to be able to talk about it. I couldn't hold the secret. I'm not one to hold secrets. That's why I don't have sources or inside source. I don't do any of that because you know I will repeat it.
Yeah,
So
I agree with you. I think it'd be very impactful
yeah,
uh, seeing a lot of, uh, well, important, very credible people talking about the reality of this.
sure.
And yeah, I hope they have a premiere in Los Angeles soon. Uh, and I'll be
Oh, I'm
there.
sure they will.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
be there. I hope.
100%. Well, I mean, just to end on this, I don't want to. I'm sure you might have signed something for this documentary too. But like, did you just talk about your own experience? I'm assuming the what happened in
You know,
1967.
they interviewed me, over a year ago. I can't tell you right now exactly what I talked about, except my experience. But,
Sure,
uh,
sure. Where'd they shoot it at? Your house or you go
no,
somewhere
it's
else?
actually closer to L.A. Yeah, just on the outskirts. I think, like in the Hollywood, Beverly Hills area, something like that.
Sure. Yeah. No, I mean the production looks amazing on
Yeah.
this thing. It just looks great. I mean, if I'm being honest, I really cannot wait to see this thing. And so many people are wondering when it's going to get released to the public. So hopefully they figure out distribution and can
Right.
start setting some of those dates so people can, get that in their mind and look forward to that. Well, no, that's awesome, Robert. And I look forward to seeing you in that documentary. And I just want to give you, I just want to say thank you so much for taking the time with me today and chatting. It was an honor. It was a pleasure just to hear from you, and um, I'll be pushing, you know, to get you to testify too. If I'm asked, if I, it's there. Everyone wants you to testify, so hopefully the powers that be will see that and act on it because I think having you with a couple other people or however many they pick to have a hearing based around incidents like yours would be quite powerful, to be
Yeah,
honest.
well, even if I don't testify, I'll still be noisy.
Yeah.
Well,
I
let's put it that
love it. I love it. No, I'm with you. And you're going to be a contact in the desert, right?
way. Right. I'll be there. So
Me
please come
too.
out.
Me too. Yeah, I'll be there. So maybe I'll get to meet you in person. That's what I'm really excited about, meeting some people in person. I've never been to a conference. I never met anybody in person. It's all been online for me for the last little over a year running my channel. So I'm excited to meet people in person and just see a lot of stuff that I know that's going on at the Contact in the Desert. So
Well,
look
I
forward
look
to
forward
seeing
to
you
seeing
there.
you there, Pat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you again, Robert. My apologies to your wife for taking you too long. I'm sure she needs you to do something, right? I know how my wife is. There's a
Uh,
list
my
stuff,
main,
which I don't mind. I don't mind,
no, no, of course not. My
right?
main
Yeah,
job is taking out the trash. So,
yeah. That's me too. That's me too. I love it. I love it. Well, look, I'm only I got to get these dates right. 13 years in with my wife. So hopefully I can reach the numbers you have because it sounds like you have a beautiful relationship. And I know personally in my life, my relationship with my wife is literally the most important thing. And I respect and love her so much. And I know what kind of impact that can have on somebody's life to have a relationship like that. So I'm really happy that you've, have that as well.
well, I'm happy
So
for you too, Patrick.
that's awesome.
I, like you say, it means everything to me to have a supportive wife like I have had for so many years.